Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I hope I've said the appropriate greeting for everybody who watches this. I don't know that there are any other that I can do. Today we're going to talk about dates, the various kinds of dates, and how detailed you need to be when you're building a software system to make sure you capture enough temporal information to solve your business problem and solve your technical problems and understand what's actually happening in that system. So I'll try and do this all in 10 minutes. We'll see if it works. So what do we mean by dates? We mean dates generated by customer actions, transactions a lot of times, which customer made a deposit, they made a withdrawal, they bought an item, they returned an item, they received an item. When they're needed by business. There are a lot of dates we use in business rules. This is actually one of my favorite areas. This rule, for Black Friday, this coupon's available, and then it's no longer available. The return period is 30 days for the whole year, but if you buy it in November and December, you get an extra through January 15th, right? So those would be business rules. And then there's event tracking, kind of like what happened. So we have generated by customers, and sometimes that overlaps event tracking a little bit. We have scheduled and future events. Those are events that are going to happen sometime out, and we plan for them, or we have dates that we record that this is N plus 30, this is N plus 45. So we do a lot of date recording so that we can support those rules. This is talk is really about capturing. Make sure you capture enough information, enough date information to understand what's happening. Sometimes we'll do roll-ups. I'll talk about analytical dates, how we may end up with more dates than we expected in our analytical store so that we understand what happened, especially true if we denormalize. What's needed by operational support. And the last one is, if you're going to do this, you want to make it clear. There are certain dates that can get confusing because people will overload their meeting. And it is always, pretty much always better to add another date field or add more data information rather than trying to overload a date that exists. Sometimes you're stuck because the data is older and you can't go back and backfit dates, and then you just got to live with it, but that's kind of bad. I never like doing that. Transaction dates, this is the easiest one. I just wanted to point out here that like the bank example is a really good one in my mind. You make a deposit. It turns out there's a whole bunch of dates tied to that. I made the mobile deposit. They accepted the mobile deposit. My credit account got credited. That means there's actually 3 dates for that deposit, right? There's probably more than that, but there's at least 3. For insurance, I'm going to buy insurance. When did it start? When did it end? When was my payment due? When did I make a payment? So for a lot of kinds of insurance, there's at least 4 different dates. There's way more than that, but I'm just picking those 4. We ran background check. We ran health check. We ran accident check if you're buying vehicle insurance, right? So there may be dates captured for all of that. Make sure you capture as many as you can, because when you don't have one, there's really no way to synthesize what happened a lot of times. So business rules, age-based specific actions. I love date spans. And onset offsets are my favorite. So age-based rules, a lot of times we'll have a lot of date-driven business rules. I actually think it's better to pull that out externally somehow, put it in a database or put it somewhere where you can see them. Burying them in code, burying them in a system a lot of times just doesn't give you the flexibility. There's onset offsets. A lot of places will enable something for some period of time. And the easiest one is a coupon. This coupon is valid between these 2 dates. It is effective and then it expires, right? And we could do the same thing for return windows for every purchase. I could record, let's do business rules, right? So when does this rule apply and when doesn't it? The tax rules changed on January 1st, right? And so on January 1st, this other set of rules comes into play. But if we look at any backdated thing where we're going to work on it in the past, this previous set of rules applied, and we can do that with onset offsets, sometimes known as effective and expiration dates. Business rules around billing cycles, all right? The charges between these 2 dates, I got to know all the dates when the charges actually happen. Not when they got reported to me, but when they actually happen, because it might take a day or so for the vendor to turn it in. Not as true anymore as it used to be. And then the purchase has got to be made within a certain date or interest starts accruing. So there's a lot of dates that need to be captured and checked. Onset offset, like I said, this is my favorite. I've seen a lot of places where we have a lot of rule-driven tables or a lot of marketing programs, and they're basically on this date, we put it into the system. That's the recorded date. And then sometime later at the onset, this rule will actually apply. This promotion will actually come on and it'll turn off at this other time. And we want to know when we entered it to make sure that we entered it with enough, maybe enough time to make sure that it could be reviewed or something else. So this one here is really just a business event. And the only thing interesting, there's 2, the usual in this, right? When was this business event generated? When did it actually made it into our recording system? I actually think those are important. It could be a while. It could be a very short period of time. But if we're going to make machine learning recommendations or other rules based on these events, I'd really like to know, when did the source system do it? And when it got to the recommendation system, when did this event actually get recorded? The other one is viewed. Sometimes we'll have things like disclaimers or privacy notices or something else. I need to know when we put it in the system because I'm hoping it was vetted. I know when we generated it in our original system so it could go into this system because it might be staged from somewhere else. And then when it was last viewed. Did they actually view this thing? And I'm going to record the date time for that. Schedule and events. This is sort of the same thing we talked about before. You can have a lot of periodic things. And so you need to capture the dates. And one of the dates here is the cycle. This could be the 10th cycle. It could be the October cycle. And in this case, I wanted to know, when was the renewal sent and when was it scheduled to be sent and when did we actually record that it got sent, right? We might have scheduled for the 31st, but it didn't really go out till halfway through the 31st, and that gives them like a half a day less, so we might need to know something like that. Data change date. This one is a little more problematic for me. So I left the viewed at in here and the created at. I think every piece of data should have a created at. I don't understand why there's no dates on every record. It's crazy. You can't sort anything. We do a lot of time series manipulation these days. There are plenty of databases that are used just for temporal data now. You should be using a temporal database for that. But this one here is modified at. So if you're doing data fixes or you're changing data through regulatory requirements or data expiration requirements, you want to know when that happened. And you can do that through an event stream. The other way to do this is add modification fields. Modified at by itself is not that great. Sometimes we'll have more than one modification. We modified it for privacy. We modified it for a data fix. I might have more than one date, but you always should have something created at and modified at. The modified just isn't always that useful because you don't know what the modification was, but it might, if it exists, then you might go to an event log to look for it. So it could be useful in that situation. Aggregation, this is really for, what I really wanted to get across here is don't lose any dates. If you've got two processes coming in and they both got their own dates and you're going to mash that into a denormalized table, into a data lake or into a reporting store, don't throw out any of those dates, right? Because they may have a little bit of offset in them. Process 1 and process 2, it's possible process 1's dates and data might really align with 2 of process 2's, right? And what I really want to know, because those two processes didn't generate their data at the same time or it wasn't effective at the same time, I need to know that when I go into the reporting store. And if I'm trying to figure out whether to update that record in the analytical store, I can't tell unless I know all the dates from the original source systems, right? I'm going to have to guess otherwise. Should the analytical store pick up a new update from process 2? I don't know, because I don't know what date the age of process 2 stuff is there in there if I only have a single create date in the analytical store. So technical dates, that's triage, tracing, litigation support. I've worked on a couple systems where we had to have event streams and time dates everywhere so that we could say when we showed somebody something or when they signed a piece of paper or when they did something else. Fine-grained ordering, a lot of times on the technical side, we like microseconds, right? Or we want milliseconds. And really on the business side, a lot of businesses are just like day-driven. But if we want to know what a user saw, or if we did something in the middle of the day instead of being end-of-day cycle, then suddenly all that time matters. This one here, really, we want to be clear about the purpose. And the modified one is the one that usually gets me. But really, you got to know what every field means. Put as many dates in as makes sense, or you can record. And I've seen systems where the dates were a third of our fields. And then make sure when you do modifications, you record somewhere that those modifications were done, either in the core data or in events. The last thing is you really got to ask the business users and the analysts what they need to know. We have to think about how to do problem resolution. If something doesn't work right, what kind of information and what kind of dates am I going to need to try and back into what actually happened? You should capture as much temporal information as you can. There's no excuse. I don't know why you would ever not have dates on fields, at least to know when that thing was created, and make sure you know what each time and date field means. So that's it for me. I tried to get all this in 10 minutes. We could do a deeper one another time. I hope this is helpful. If somebody's arguing against dates, just show them this video. Have a great day.